Ask about just any media executive, and they'll tell you that the year 2023 was not a good one for the advertising business. A combination of high interest rates and an uncertain economy made companies extremely skittish, and that caused them to pull back on their marketing spend. There are some recent signs that advertising spending is picking up in 2024, but it's still too early to know how it will shake out. But what about newsletter advertising? It's seen some strong growth in recent years, and brands have reported higher than average ROI due to the strong engagement that's seen in the inbox. Has it suffered from the same macroeconomic forces that battered the larger ad industry? To answer that question, I turn to Ryan Sager, the co-founder of Who Sponsors Stuff, a data platform that tracks sponsorships across hundreds of newsletters. In our discussion, Ryan dove deep into his own data to determine which sectors are investing big in newsletter ads and whether they've seen any slowdown in growth. Hello, I'm Simon Owens, and this is The Business of Content, the show about how publishers create, distribute, and monetize their digital content. If you want to listen to an audio version of this show, subscribe to The Business of Content wherever you get your podcasts. And longtime listeners of this show know that it carries no advertising. The only way to support the painstaking work I do here is by becoming a paid subscriber to my newsletter. Subscribers get a half-hour introductory phone call with me. They also get to submit questions every month that I try my best to answer on this very show. Subscribe at simonowens.substack.com. That's simonowens.substack.com. Or just Google the words Simon Owens and newsletter. Okay, on to my interview with Ryan. Hey Ryan, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me on.
So I'm here, or I have you here. We're going to be talking about advertising trends, specifically in newsletters heading into 2024. And the reason that you're an expert on this is because you co-founded this platform called Who Sponsors Stuff. I'd love to start by just talking about that because I think that's really fascinating business idea in and of itself. What's the origin story for Who Sponsors Stuff?
Yeah, sure. So, my business partner and I, Jesse Watkins, used to work at a company called Ladders, where I came in after leaving kind of big media, Wall Street Journal, Time Magazine. Went over to Ladders to build out a content operation. They're a job search site and built out a content operation around like career and the workplace and the future of work. And they had a very big email list. And so this was like 2017, 18, when Morning Brew was just starting to explode. And social was dead. And so we really delved in that like a daily newsletter was the way to monetize this content. And Jesse came in with an ad sales background and just started selling direct ads on that, going crazy. And, we quickly stood up, $2.5 million a year, media operation at Ladders. And so after that, we were
What
doing.
was the newsletter about that you were selling ads against?
Yeah, so it was all career and productivity and like very advertiser friendly stuff at the end of the day. And so that was like really good to sell direct advertising against, nothing programmatic. We cut out, live intent squares and things like that and just did direct. And so then after that, Jesse and I were doing some third party sales coming in for, big newsletters that needed some extra firepower on ad sales. And as we did that and took on clients, we were just in so many verticals that I started needing like, I've got to figure out something to see like who's advertising in newsletters because certainly then, and I think still now, like a third of the conversation, a third of the like deal time can be cut out if they already know what newsletters are. Like if you're not first selling them on the channel and then on your product. And
And
so, yeah.
that's because like there's like a huge lag in terms of adoption of newsletter advertising. Even though the medium has been around for a long time, most advertisers, most brands just like they're still not advertising on newsletters, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you find that a lot of them are just more comfortable in the social channels they're very used to, in the web, display channels they're very used to. So yeah, we've seen like lots more people coming in. And so anyway, we were tracking all this
Before we get to
stuff.
that,
Yeah.
like let's just talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that a little bit more. So I mean, isn't that kind of strange considering what we know about newsletters and how loyal those audiences are, and plus the opportunity for like direct like response, ads and stuff like that? Isn't that like really strange that like advertisers are much more comfortable with buying crappy display ads that do nothing for them than like a very high engagement high ROI medium like newsletters?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a typical problem where, people who've been doing this kind of buying their entire career are just comfortable with what they know, and they just kind of, you keep doing what you know year after year, even if it's not the best thing. I mean, I think advertisers are catching on. We've certainly seen, we see probably 50 new brands a week entering the newsletter space. So we track 500 newsletters across tons of verticals, B2C and B2B. And yeah, on average, about 15 a day of new sponsors popping up in our database. And sometimes those are, sponsors who are huge names, and it's just like, oh, this is the first time they've been in newsletters. It's really like, oh, General Electric suddenly shows up, and like maybe they haven't done anything in there before. So I think the bigger brands are catching up. Certainly, the DTC brands have always been like big in this space. The ones like, an Allbirds or somebody who used to spend a ton. I think they're doing a little less now. And like, meal kits and like tons of DTC stuff has been big in the space for a long time.
So you're at this newsletter. Jesse is like killing it with doing ads. You're starting to sell. You started like an agency, I'm guessing, that was like selling advertising for other newsletters and stuff like that. And you're just saying like, wow, like it's so much easier to sell a newsletter ad to someone who's already bought a newsletter ad. So I need some kind of compilation of who's buying ads across newsletters. That's kind of like the germ of the idea, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like we need to see who's buying in the space, and just kind of started building out that tracking just internally as an internal tool for a while, until we realized, this is actually a much better product than it is just an internal tool. So we should go, sell this to publishers. And so
Yeah.
that's what
Is
we
there
started
is there a
doing.
tool are there tools like that in other mediums? Like is there something tracking like who's sponsoring YouTube videos or who's buying ads in these niche publications? Like does this exist in other mediums, or was this just like a completely new idea?
So it's existed for sort of print and display advertising for a long time in Media Radar. So Media Radar, is a great tool. We used it at Ladders. My partner Jesse has used it across various jobs. And they initially had a model where they were really just like going out and buying the print magazines and scanning them, and then now they kind of do static web pages. We just found though that they'd never, and even still to this day, caught up on newsletter, and they're not tracking the sort of native newsletter industry. And so, yeah, and then there's also podcast tracking tools I've seen. That's like a different kind of space. Like a lot of that is sold across networks, very programmatically. And I'm starting to see a few tools that track like, social ads. You can see ads on Facebook or TikTok. It's all a little rudimentary still, but like I think that's obviously a great space, and there's some white space there to do more of that.
Yeah, so you're starting to build this tool for your own ad sales. What was the kind of transition or that you're like, "Oh, wait, we can just actually build this out as a product?"
Yeah, I mean, I was really just, putting this all into an Airtable myself. And up until about 3 months ago, this all was still a homegrown product, where I just had this huge Airtable that we kept building out further and further, and then put a front end called Softer on it, which is just like an app that can, suck in your Airtable data and put a nice front end on it. So yeah, we finally got around, a couple months ago to doing a full rebuild of the site. So it's much fancier and feature rich, and like, kind of night and day from what we were doing about 3 months ago. So now it's finally, I'm no longer the CTO. I'm an editorial guy, so I should not be the CTO of anything. So uh, yeah, it was really just, that turning point was like, this can be productized pretty easily. So let's go sell it.
And when did Who Sponsor Stuff debut as an actual platform that people could pay for?
Yeah, so I think our first real sale on that was in December 22. And so that was, I believe 6 a.m. City was our first ever client on that. They just closed a big fundraising round today. So congrats, guys. Uh, and yeah, since then, I mean, we've got about 60 publishers on us, a mix of everyone from, the biggest guys like Morning Brew, Daily Upside, down to, solopreneurs who are just crushing it with their own products, and agencies. And so yeah, I mean, it's just been a really steady build of more and more business there, because we have found there's not anything else that really tracks this with any quality. And so we're a lot of people need this kind of data.
Well, how does it work? Like, how are you collecting the information, and how is the end client like? How do they use it?
Sure. So we track everything basically in a giant inbox, and it is still human processed. So, we do have people ask all the time, like, Can AI do this? We've run some pilots on this, and I've seen people trying it with AI. I mean, my sense of it is like as good as ChatGPT and OpenAI is. If you've ever, I don't know how much any of you or your audience have played around with this. I mean, when we run newsletters through it, like the accuracy of finding the sponsors is probably 70 to 80%, and like yeah, you can maybe do it a little faster and cheaper that way, but like you're missing so much, and it's sometimes hard for humans to parse. Like, what is this ad? It's this product, but that's owned by this company, and this company is really just this company. So it's a lot of untangling things that humans are doing every day to make sure we're giving you like really clear insight onto who might have bought the ad, and then giving you the best contact information, which is also human pulled. And then our paid product is called Sales Pro. People have that. Our site is just big database, about 7,000 plus advertisers in there who've appeared in newsletters, and there's a lot of ways to filter that by what type of company, what vertical is the company in, or by what vertical the newsletter the ad appeared in is. You can also do things like by frequency, like who's run an ad more than 3 times, so you're not just getting like somebody who bought a one-off in Morning Brew and kind of never came back. And so there's a lot of ways to parse and slice and dice the data, and then you can set up daily alerts like, oh, I want everything in AI sent to my inbox every morning, and so you can set up that kind of alert, or you can get much more granular than that.
So if I run like a finance newsletter and I'm like, okay, I need to start selling ads. I pay to subscribe. I know that it's like what, mid 5 figures or something like that for an annual subscription.
No, it's under 5 figures, four
Or
figures.
no, it's 4 figures. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I got my numbers mixed up there. And so, I go in and I maybe search the category finance, and I see, and what will that'll show me all the different sponsors, what specific newsletters they've, and then also who the main point of contact is, what their email address, phone number, different stuff like that.
Yeah, email address, LinkedIn. We don't provide phone. We really don't encourage anyone in ad sales to be ringing people's phones. I think that's probably from another
Yeah,
era.
another era. Yeah.
Sorry, we get that question sometimes. I'm like, we do not provide phone numbers. If you want to go dig up someone's phone number and call them, like that's on you guys. So yeah, and so yeah, also something you're getting at there, like there's also the creative archive. So we have every sponsor, you can see each placement and you can see screenshots of the placement, and that's really the most valuable thing. Like we find the clients who are sort of crushing it on ad sales, we see them online every day because they're going back to that creative archive and they're saying, okay, this is their messaging when they ran in Morning Brew, this is their messaging when they ran in TLDR, and looking at that copy and really trying to understand, and looking at we have the landing pages and the landing page UTMs and stuff preserved, so you can really get a look at their funnel and say, okay, this brand was trying to convert people to a direct conversion with a coupon code, and like here's exactly what they were trying to do. So it's beyond just the names of the companies or like treating it like a lead list. It's really kind of a 360-degree like intelligence on what a brand is trying to accomplish in the email space.
And are your like the people doing your data entry? They're just basically just subscribing to these 500 newsletters, and every day as they come in, they just open them up and then just start tallying it into the Airtable or whatever.
Yeah, if you're somebody who does inbox zero, you might have nightmares about that job. But it is, yeah, basically that is the drill.
Cool. So let's start to now that we've kind of gotten the understanding of how the platform works. Like obviously, you have somewhat of a macro view of what's going on in the advertising industry, specifically the newsletter industry. But I'm guessing some of it is mirroring what's happening elsewhere. So like as we're heading, well, first let's talk about 2023. Obviously, publishers across the board have reported that weakening ad sales, that it was a really tough year for selling ads. Was that reflected in your data in 2023? Did you see any kind of decreases or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so much new money is flowing into the newsletter space that you're not going to see, certainly in tracking like ours, you're not going to see like a decline in the total spend. But certainly consumer, everything we've heard on consumer is people had an extremely rough 2023. We've obviously seen a huge push towards, performance. A lot of advertisers only want a pay per click or only want a pay per acquisition. which they'll really beat up your smaller publishers on that stuff. So B2C has been, consumer has been very tough. B2B, I wouldn't say there's been nearly as much of a bloodbath. I mean, I think 2023 ended up being like okay for B2B, and I think everything we're hearing as clients, we talk obviously to a ton of people, both clients and prospective clients. Everybody seems to feel that 2024 is off to a much brighter start than what they saw last year. So, fingers crossed for everybody, but it's hopefully turning up a little.
Is there like an opportunity for like, in terms of if you're having a soft advertising quarter or whatever, like, is there a huge affiliate opportunity in newsletter? I know that, like, I remember reading that Amazon does not allow affiliate links in newsletters. Like, do you find like a lot of newsletters are engaging in like just more standard affiliate marketing and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that any newsletter should, completely turn down CPC or CPA or doing affiliate. I think you always have to have kind of a waterfall where you first try and sell direct and then you have, other fill options. So, there's obviously a lot of stuff that does other than Amazon that allows affiliate links. So plenty of newsletters are doing, a lot of business on affiliate links, and some are obviously, shoppable newsletters. Certainly some, especially a lot of like women's consumer brands have like really focused on like more shoppable formats. We don't track much of that because it's something where, you have 20 shoppable links in a newsletter, and it's like you can't really go sell a direct ad to those brands. So we don't really track shoppable in our database just because it doesn't make sense for what our customers would use it for. The Amazon thing's really interesting. So I looked into this a while ago because I ran into that ages ago when I wanted to start doing that. I was like, oh, we should do Amazon affiliate links in our newsletter, and then I found out that you can't. But what I also found out is that if you're big enough, you can get around that. And Amazon, if you can get like an Amazon rep because you're big enough, suddenly the rules can bend for you. So there are brands that like are able to drive enough volume that Amazon is making exceptions for them. And like, I know we should probably put together a content piece on that. It's a very small number of brands that I won't name here, but like it is possible, but you have to be fairly big and driving a fairly big amount of traffic to them.
Yeah, but either way, a lot of ad deals, especially direct response, they'll include some kind of trackable link, usually where they can actually track ROI for ads for people who are clicking within the newsletter ad and landing on their page, and whether they make a purchase and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, we also encourage, tracking is so iffy with Apple privacy controls and all sorts of things that, for the bigger brands who are sort of running sophisticated marketing operations, it is good if your partner, if you as the publisher, if your advertising partner is creating like a dedicated landing page, because then they can track the traffic directly then as to what's hitting their landing page and track the conversions more closely. Now, I'm not sure, I don't think everyone should be getting paid just on conversions, but still the brands are always going to care about that.
Yeah. So as we're heading into 2024, have you noticed, like, obviously I feel like there was a lot of worry about a recession in 2023, and that might have triggered some of the drawback in marketing spend, because that's always the first thing that goes. But it seems like there's like some renewed confidence in a soft landing. And then obviously there's talk of the Federal Reserve lowering rates. Are you seeing any kind of uptick? Or obviously you said that because of the nature of newsletter advertising, it's still in its growth stage. You didn't see any like actual like decrease in advertising spend, but are you seeing an acceleration or anything like that?
I mean, it's very early in the year to try and measure something like that. So I would just say anecdotally, certainly our clients are saying things have picked back up, but I wouldn't say I can see a line on a chart yet that shows me anything out of the ordinary. But certainly anecdotally, it seems like things are picking up, and that 2023 was, as you said, just a lot of jitters about the sort of phantom recession that never happened. And hopefully 2024 is getting back to a little more confidence and animal spirits, as they say.
So do you feel like, as someone who speaks to a lot of people in the ad sales, that they're feeling more upbeat and optimistic?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the mood has just changed tremendously on that. Yeah.
So, in terms of like when you're looking at your database, which content niches have strong advertising demand? Where are you seeing the highest concentration in ad buys right now?
I mean, as far as categories where we're seeing like a lot of new sponsors, I think, it won't surprise anyone to say that, AI saw an explosion last year and AI is still exploding. Other than that, finance is always going to have high demand. The sort of, value of a customer acquisition in any finance product is always going to be, great. And people are always looking for, a high income audience with a lot to invest. So those are on the consumer side the biggest things. And then, B2B, everything in B2B represents such a huge opportunity. I mean, I feel like a lot of people come into this space and they just immediately want to create like a B2C brand, maybe because that's more fun. That's, like what people are more into, but like B2B, uh, you know, is just, there's so many niches that are like underexplored there. Like we've seen an uptick. I think people are getting the idea that like a healthcare AI is like a really good one. That's like a cool build. We've seen a couple people sort of building narrowly focused on like what is AI tech, how's that going to be implemented in healthcare. And so that's like if you can get the right 50,000 people who are like decision makers at healthcare companies and who are going to be involved in those tech adoption decisions, like that is a great little advertising niche. So like, to take that as an example, I would just think, if you're thinking about AI, I would niche way down and say, okay, AI as it applies to X B2B problem. And that's where you should start your newsletter, not like I'm going to start the 100th general interest AI newsletter to, tell people here's five things, like five cool AI things this today. Like there's so many of those that you're really going to have a hard time standing out. Now, there's obviously some of those that have built huge brands, and those market leaders are probably going to be the ones that sort of, winner takes all, like, a superhuman or somebody like that. Like, they're in a market leading position and they should keep going and they're a client and, they're doing awesome. But there's so many, littler ones that are probably going to get scooped up, whether they just like shut down or get bought up by the bigger AI newsletters to like, do some consolidation in the industry. You really want to be more careful than just picking the hot thing and doing a consumer version of it.
Hey, I just want to interrupt the programming for just a moment to note that you are at the halfway point of the video. If you made it this far, then that's probably a sign that you like this sort of content. So maybe just take a second to subscribe to the channel below. If you're feeling especially generous, you can hit the like button. Okay, back to the show. One thing I've noticed is that like one of the most frequent newsletter advertisers are other newsletters. Like there's all these like platforms on the market like Sparkloop and stuff like that where it's like basically a marketplace where you can set you can create customized affiliate links, and then if somebody promotes your newsletter and it results in a sign up, it's like a pay per acquisition type of deal. Where so like let's say I promote the Who Sponsor Stuff newsletter, and I send you over like 20 subscribers, then you only pay me whatever the $3 per subscriber or whatever, something like that. Seems like there's a little bit of a maybe like a slight bubble that's happening because obviously all the news around like everybody's trying to do the morning brew for X type of model. So like you're just seeing like a lot of newsletters that are using this kind of arbitrage and growth hacking by using paid acquisition. I don't know. Do you think like that's like a substantial part of the newsletter market? And if so, do you think that's a risk of a bubble popping?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a risk to that. I'll say, like, as an operator, as you mentioned, like we have our own newsletter. Obviously, we have a newsletter about newsletters, and we use that as a growth method, like for sure. We use the Sparkloop part of, yeah, set bounty. This is what a subscriber is worth to us. You can put in parameters on like that person to qualify for us having to pay for it. They have to open a certain amount of times and they have to click. So you can set sort of engagement metrics. And we found that to be an effective way to grow. And since our business model is based around selling a paid product, we're not too worried about cannibalization. Like, we're not worried that, oh, they're subscribing to us at the same time as they're subscribing to Matt McGarry. That doesn't, that probably doesn't lessen the value of that subscriber to us, right? Matt does growth and you do media commentary. I don't really care if they're subscribed to all three lists. Now, if I were a consumer brand and I'm trying to sell, you know, tech products to tech enthusiasts, yeah, then I worry a little bit like, do I want the person who signs up for me to sign up for two or three other like tech gadget newsletters at the same time? Like if I'm making my money selling ads against them, eventually clicking and buying, some gizmo, that does worry me a little. I mean, that said, the engagement metrics seem pretty strong from the stuff that comes through these networks. We know a lot of people growing this way, and they haven't seen major audience problems. I do think, it's something we're all watching in the industry of whether like this sort of circular economy can work. Because, ultimately you still need the pie to grow, right? We're sharing the pie, but we still need somebody going out there and getting new users from Facebook and SEO and Twitter. And so, yeah, it is an arbitrage. I mean, what you were talking about, people say, okay, I'll go out and advertise on Facebook. I pay $2 a lead on Facebook and I'm getting $1 back on my like upscribe on Sparkloop. And so like I'm paying a lot less to acquire. So I mean it is a very tempting way to grow. And I think especially in probably the B2B space, like a very smart way to grow. I worry about it a little like you're saying in B2C, but so far the metrics seem I don't think anyone needs to raise any fire alarms yet.
Well, is that like your main customer acquisition as you're getting people signed up? Because you have a free newsletter that like, rounds up some industry news and also shares a little bit of data from your database to kind of tease it. Is that your kind of main kind of customer or purchase funnel right now? Is that newsletter?
Yeah, I mean it's word of mouth, customer referrals, and the newsletter. Yeah, we definitely spend a lot of time like building up that newsletter list. And if somebody's did in what we're yeah, we do weekly news on the newsletter industry, and so yeah, if you're in the industry and interested in that kind of news and you're interested in seeing the like we show you 10 sponsors a week, yeah, if you're interested in that, you're definitely like a prospect for our paid product, and you of course get a welcome sequence about that. So yeah, that is definitely one of our major acquisition channels.
Well, none of them will compare to the number of customers you'll get from being on this podcast. But
Exactly.
in terms of, you talked about some of the strong advertising demand. A lot of it's in the AI space. Anything where you're seeing kind of like a weakness?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would surprise anyone that, there was, well, so the interesting ones. So, you had crypto blew up, obviously. You get Milk Road's huge acquisition. And, I think they probably sold at the right time. Right after they sold, you saw like a lot of weakness in the crypto market. And, I don't know what the lag is between like the actual crypto market and then the crypto advertising market. I feel like we saw a really big dip in crypto advertisers when it was down. And now I'm probably starting to see a lot more of those coming back day to day. So like it does seem to work on a cycle with maybe a 1 to 3 month lag on like Bitcoin prices, as far as I can tell. I mean, I will say a lot of the stuff I'm seeing now is um, scammier than what I feel like I saw a year ago. Like, you saw, fairly legitimate crypto products that had, this is what we do all day, but, so an indicator is like, do they have a LinkedIn page or do they just have like Discord? We were seeing a lot more that had like LinkedIn pages a year ago that seemed, yeah, there were identifiable people behind them and they were sort of real companies. Now you get a lot of like crypto webinar, how to make $1 billion in crypto by faceless YouTube channel. So those are, we record them. They're sponsors. They're in our database, but like, I'm not sure. I wouldn't buy their products.
What kind of ad formats are dominating? Like you saw in like the podcast industry where its first like 15 years were funded mainly to direct advertising, direct response advertising, and you heard all these industry watchers talking about it's when the brands come on, that's when the money really floods the market and you see a huge explosion in terms of market size. We talked about newsletters being really good in terms of like direct response. Is that mainly the type of format that we're seeing still is the direct response type of advertising?
Yeah, I think in consumer, your email is at the end of the day, it looks a lot like direct mail and it looks a lot like direct response. Like it is something where you send people a button and they can click that button and go buy your product. I mean, it's very few newsletters can really pull off, a pure branding play where Skim or the Morning Brew goes and an agency for, whoever is handling Chase, wants to go do a big brand awareness, thing for millennial women on the skim. That still strikes me as like very much a minority of what's going on in the space. It's a lot more middle-sized companies doing much more direct response based stuff. And I say that on the side. On the B2B side, I think there is a world where like, well, B2B and like lobbying, right? So like, your Axioses, your Punch Bowls, your Politicos, you'll definitely see a lot of just sort of lobbying money there. Just, Google or Facebook has its lobbying campaign. So you'll see a lot of money spent in those kinds of pubs that way. And then B2B, I think there is still more argument of just like you want to get your name in front of potential buyers and they're not, procurement and stuff, and they're not going to necessarily buy off the first email you run in Industry Dive or in one of the Workweek brands, but like in B2B, there's more value probably in getting that visibility for your new cool accounting or HR software or your administration product, like that stuff is probably they're not direct conversions off of running an ad, but they will get you to sign up for their webinar or get the white paper or get some sort of lead out of you and also get that brand awareness.
Is it mostly like, I'm guessing it's mostly ads that are run within the newsletter itself? I know some newsletters will send a sponsored send, which it just boggles my mind. I could not imagine creating that bad of a user experience for your subscribers. But I mean, how prevalent is that? Is the the standalone sponsored send where it's just an ad going out to the entire list?
Well, those sponsored sends can make a lot of money. So I've run a number of those, and we definitely have clients that do it. So what I advise clients there is like it obviously has to do with alignment. If you're sending something that just is not aligned with your audience, that's just scummy or for your audience, yeah, that's going to be a terrible experience. But if you're a healthy lifestyle brand or a food brand and you send like something that's really on target, whether it's like a particular kind of meal kit or whatever kind of like kitchen equipment, and it's something that's maybe coming with like actual narrative and like endorsement of the operator in a way that feels authentic. I think that stuff does really well, and it looks like influencer marketing than you see on other channels like Instagram and TikTok influencers. It looks very very organic in a way that a lot of traditional advertising isn't. So that when you have the alignment is certainly one of your bigger formats. And I mean, I think everything, I'm not going to surprise anyone here who knows newsletters. I mean, it does have to be native. You shouldn't in this day and age be running a banner ad in your newsletter. You shouldn't be running a rectangle. You just should not be doing that at this point. So some people still do, but the native ad is what rules in newsletters. And I think that's why it's been so hard for some of these for companies that want to sort of make versions of email advertising, like that's a very difficult thing. All the networks that are trying to do that.
Or trying to do what? Sorry.
Sorry, like you definitely see some of the ESPs like Beehive, and you also see like Live Intent working on a native product. You really are trying to square the circle of like this is a programmatic ad. There's no direct relationship with the publisher, but we want it to look native. We want it to have, a headline and a hero image and make it look like, sort of the Morning Brew advertisement, but it's not. It's just being plugged in programmatically.
It's like a self-serve.
Yeah.
Is there anything like programmatic ad targeting in newsletters, like in terms of, actually maybe targeting people like a subset of a list where they'll see one ad and then another subset of a list will see another ad? Or is it basically still just 100%, one ad goes out to 100% of the list and is just contextually targeted based on the niche of the list?
I think very few brands are trying that. It does exist. I've seen, you have to have a pretty big list. I've seen Flipboard do that, and I've seen Morning Brew do that. Where it's not even necessarily clear, but just because like I have my subscription and our main mailbox has its subscription and Jesse has his subscription, my business partner, and like we'll actually say, oh, hold on, they different things here. So it's not always clear that that's happening, but unless you're at a size of a Morning Brew, of a Skim, I don't know if 1440 does it. 1440 could do it. They have a lot, but people are definitely experimenting with it. And I don't know quite how much Beehive is doing it, because obviously they have their ad network that they've been promoting. Um, Typically, I think that's really just like the newsletter is offered the ad, and they kind of take it or don't. So there's, I guess you could call that targeting. I don't think that it is serving anything like differently. I think it's when the operator chooses it, they know exactly what's going to run. So I think they could obviously a network something like that. I don't think they are yet, and my apologies if somebody from there is watching and saying, "No, we do that."
Yeah.
So,
I
but
guess I
I
just
haven't seen it yet.
I guess I just wonder what data you could even really target off of, except maybe click through data if they click on certain things or something like that. But seems like the inbox is becoming more and more of a black box because of all the privacy stuff that's going through. That it would be hard to even really target that well.
Yeah, I mean, for newsletters, obviously there's different schools of thought on this. I mean, for me, the beauty of newsletter advertising is that hopefully the newsletter itself is the target, right? The newsletter is telling you the interest profile. If somebody is on this newsletter, it's because they're interested in X. Now that gets tough. You're 1440 and they're on because they want like nonpartisan, unbiased news. That probably doesn't help you a ton. That is a bad example. But if a B2B newsletter about healthcare and like hospital industry, what else, beyond that, how much more targeted do you want? Maybe want to target advertisers want to target by job role, and the publishers will try and collect that information when they can. But I don't think, uh, apologies if I'm wrong. I don't think too many of those brands are segmenting out by job role in their sends, or it's like a very niche thing if they're doing.
So we're starting to see Chrome roll out the deprecation of the cookie. It's just a small percentage now, but it's eventually going to reach 100%. Where cookie based browser advertising will pretty much but that'll be the end of it because Safari already blocks it, and it's already blocked on Chrome on iOS devices. So I think I read only like maybe 40% of internet browsers, people browsing on the internet, are even being tracked by cookies as it is today. So it's already shrinking. What does that mean for newsletters, do you think? Like, do you think it's good? Like, you're seeing a lot of trepidation from brands and advertisers about the ability to track using cookies. I've obviously been very bearish on programmatic display advertising as it is, as an effective ROI tool. Do you think this will be good for newsletter advertising in the future?
I think so. I mean, the entire direction of how social advertising has been degraded has been, very good for the newsletter industry. Because again, back to that idea, like hopefully a lot of the targeting is the newsletter itself. Is that you've sort of accumulated this community of interest around a topic, so that that should be good. And then a lot of publishers are just going to have to focus more on getting users to log in, which is obviously something newsletters are great to register an account, and then you can start sending them a newsletter, and they can come to your site from the newsletter, hopefully in a logged in state. So I think it's all the more incentive for the legacy brands to invest more and more in newsletters. And I do feel like we are really seeing like legacy brands, really old line companies start to treat newsletters very seriously in the last couple of years, in terms of like big publishers who treated newsletters as an afterthought are making big investments or selling direct ads to them. You're seeing companies like the AP and Reuters, making big investments in revamping their newsletters from sort of a backwater to a flagship. So I think that will only accelerate with the cookieless world.
Okay, Ryan. Well, those were all the questions I had for you. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, we are whosponsorstuff.com. So that is our site. And also sign up for our email intelligence newsletter. And yeah, that's a weekly roundup of everything in newsletters and some sponsors. If you run a sponsorship program, those should be pretty interesting too.
Awesome. Well, this is a lot of fun. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks a lot, Simon.